What's going on, bottom line viewers and NFL bettors? It's Mitch back here with another NFL best bets video. In this video, my week 2 spread picks, my week 2 best bets versus the spread. Last week in week 1, we had a little bit of a rough time versus the spread. We went 2-3, which isn't ideal, but we're looking to bounce back there. Overall, we did go 5-3, going 3-1 on our over-under picks. So make sure to check out both videos this week to get the best value possible. I said in week 1, it's difficult to win versus the spread because all of the value is soaked up. So hopefully for week 2, we can have a big week with these 6 picks. Let's begin with pick number 1, which was an early bet for me personally. I took the Las Vegas Raiders at -3.5 on Sunday night. It shot up to -5.5, but I am so confident in this pick that I'm still making it a best bet for you. Typically, when a line moves 2 points, moves strongly in one direction, and I don't get the best of the number, I'm not willing to give you it as a best bet, even though I already bet it. This is a different case. I feel very good about the Las Vegas Raiders in this game at home over the Arizona Cardinals -5.5. The Las Vegas Raiders lost a game versus a very good Los Angeles Chargers team in LA. This time they play a very, very bad Arizona Cardinals team. And not only are the Cardinals very bad in my opinion, they are still thought of as being kind of good, which is why there's a lot of value on the Raiders here. The Raiders lost a game to a AFC contender on the road, technically on the road, right? It's not really a lot of home field advantage for the Chargers there, especially versus the Raiders. But even so, they lost a game to a AFC contender, a team that many picked to win that division, the best division in football. They have a great defense. We saw them get pressure on Derek Carr. We saw Derek Carr turn the ball over, and they only lost by 5. They had the ball with 3:30 left with a chance to win the game despite turning the ball over 3 times. Derek Carr missed a couple throws, including Darren Waller in the end zone. The Raiders, despite their mistakes, and despite learning new systems on offense and defense, the Chargers did not have to do that, almost beat the Chargers in week 1. That means they're a pretty talented team. That means they're a pretty good team. And I think people are underestimating that. Not enough people actually believe the Raiders are good, which holds this number under 6. But I believe the Raiders are good and the Cardinals are bad. A lot of people are looking at that Chiefs-Cardinals game and saying, well, it was the Chiefs. The Chiefs shredded the Cardinals. The Chiefs are the real deal. The Chiefs are Super Bowl contenders. You've got Patrick Mahomes throwing for 5 touchdowns. If you are a half-decent team, you're not allowing 5 touchdowns to Patrick Mahomes, as good as he is, and that offense. Sorry. I like the Chiefs. I think they're good. But the Cardinals, it was more about them being bad. Their defense has a lack of a pass rush. There's no Chandler Jones there anymore. No run defense to speak of. It was weak last year, no JJ Watt, a secondary with arguably the worst cornerback depth chart in the NFL, an offense that doesn't have DeAndre Hopkins, that really doesn't have a lot of upper echelon talent supporting Kyler Murray, and a pretty limited offensive scheme overall under Cliff Kingsbury. James Conner, the run game didn't look hot versus the Chiefs. The Raiders did a phenomenal job versus the Chargers run game and Austin Eckler, which is a superior run game. And the Raiders defense, I think, is a little underrated. I think Nate Hobbs is one of those underrated corners who shut down Mike Williams last week. Just look at the box score. He can do the same thing to Marquise Brown, force the football elsewhere. I believe that this Raiders defense is well coached. They have 2 very good edge rushers who can not only get to the quarterback, but also contain the edge. They're athletic. They can chase down Kyler Murray. They can cause discomfort in the pocket. And then offensively, I just think the Raiders are going to be able to do whatever they like, whatever they please. Hunter Renfrow should bounce back massively. And Davante Adams might go for 200 yards in this game. If the Cardinals continue to blitz at the rate that they did to the Chiefs, against the Chiefs, well, Davante Adams one-on-one in an island is going to be a problem. Darren Waller one-on-one, Hunter Renfrow one-on-one. You can't leave these guys one-on-one. You have to play coverage. You have to double. If you don't, it's going to be big plays. It's going to be explosive plays. And not only that, the Raiders can pace this game. They can run the ball. Josh McDaniels will run it down your throats if he sees that crease of exposure to a potential weakness. I just think the Raiders are a much, much superior team in this spot. And they're at home, a real home field advantage in Las Vegas. I understand it's short travel for Arizona, but this is a real home field advantage in Vegas, especially the first game in Vegas of a season. New coaching staff, new regime, new weapons. A lot to love for Raiders fans to cheer for, and they're excited for this one. I think the Raiders blow the doors off the Cardinals. They win in a sneaky blowout of 10 plus, 14 plus points, and we're saying after this game that, hey, the Raiders are good in this division, and the Cardinals are bad. My second best bet versus the spread for week number 2 is the New York Jets +6, +6.5, either or, versus the Cleveland Browns. If you can get the 6.5, that's fantastic. I would take it. If you want to bet it at 6, it's also cool. I think this game is a clear under. I think this game is a clear defensive battle between the Jets and the Browns. And I understand betting on the Jets is ugly, but betting on Jacoby Brissett is also extremely ugly. And I don't see a huge difference between Jacoby Brissett and Joe Flacco in this game. And I see two teams that are going to play it close to the vest, that are going to play it very conservatively, and I think two defenses that are pretty good. And this helps the game go under. This helps the game become defensive. And when the game is this low scoring, you take the points, especially close to a full touchdown and extra point every single time. The New York Jets, I thought, had an underrated, under the radar defensive performance last week versus the Baltimore Ravens. I thought their defense really played well, especially against the run, which is the area where you need to play strong versus the Cleveland Browns. If the Jets are able to replicate their success that they had versus Baltimore versus the Browns, with guys like Quinnen Williams, CJ Mosley, John Franklin Myers, Carl Lawson, there's a lot of talent in this front seven and a lot of guys that can stuff the run. Robert Saleh's defensive scheme loves to inherently play a lot of people in the box, which forces more pressure on his corners on islands, but also it's harder to run against that defense. When you have 8 people in the box, when you have 8 people defending the run in their run fits, you have the capacity to slow down a good offensive line, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and this running game. And Robert Saleh is not dumb on the defensive side of the ball. He's going to force Jacoby Brissett to beat him. And with the corners that he has, who played exceptionally well versus Baltimore, DJ Reed, who had an interception, Sauce Gardner, who allowed 1 catch last week and actually covered Mark Andrews in the game for a majority of the time. These are 2 corners that can play, also underrated. I feel like the Jets defense makes this a game. Joe Flacco dinks and dunks his way to a few points and a few drives. And I do think the Jets have a decent running game that they can keep that pass rush off of Joe Flacco enough. On top of that, I think Elijah Moore, Braxton Berrios, Corey Davis, Garrett Wilson, ton of weapons here to throw the ball to. He does a good job distributing the football to his playmakers. I wouldn't actually be that surprised if the Jets pulled an upset off in this game. I think it's going to be that close. The Cleveland Browns, yeah, Myles Garrett's concerning against a limited offensive line. But I mean, the Panthers, that matchup was as bad as it gets, going against a rookie left tackle. So I feel like the Jets are a much better matchup on paper than the Carolina Panthers were versus the Browns. And that's why I take the Jets here, plus the 6. It's ugly, but I like it. Jacksonville Jags getting 4 points at home versus the Indianapolis Colts. Jacksonville has been a house of horrors for the Indianapolis Colts. We saw what happened last year. In order to go to the playoffs, the Colts had to beat the Jags, and it was a disaster. I understand Matt Ryan's a quarterback now and Wentz isn't. Well, according to week 1, I thought Wentz was better than Matt Ryan. I really did. So how much is there really separating these two quarterbacks? How much of the Colts really improved? The Colts are fairly limited from a receiving core standpoint. Alec Pierce, the rookie, got hurt. Paris Campbell, he's going to have to step up big. Michael Pittman had a huge game. Jonathan Taylor had a huge game. But we know where the offense is coming from the Colts. And you got to remember that Doug Peterson and Frank Reich are very familiar with each other. So there's going to be a lot of crossover here. And with familiarity, that kind of breeds a close game. And I love the points in that type of game, in that type of coaching matchup where they know each other so well. They know their steps, they know their plays, they know their process. And I just don't buy that the Colts are this dominant team, especially in a spot that they traditionally struggle. It's like even the best Patriots teams struggled in Miami because that was just the house of horrors. I think this is similar for Indianapolis. I do think that the Jags have a better run defense than Houston, so I don't think they're going to be completely ran over by the Indianapolis Colts offensive line and their run game, which in turn, I mean, the Texans were beating the Colts, I believe, 20-3 last week. They let the Colts back in the game, and it ended up being a tie. Are we forgetting that the Texans were arguably the least talented team entering the NFL this year, and the Colts tied them from a huge comeback that they had? Maybe the Colts started slow, I don't know. But Jacksonville last week, I thought offensively looked very good, very crisp. Their offensive line struggled in moments, but Lawrence was able to evade pressure, make big-time throws. This is a guy that can play at a high level and make those big throws down the field. Zay Jones looked good. Christian Kirk looked good. Travis Etienne and James Robinson looked phenomenal out of the backfield. The Jacksonville Jags, I think, are being slept on. They're young, they're inexperienced, but they've got a lot of talent. They're well coached. And if they can clean some things up from last week, where I really thought they could have won that game, if they didn't make a couple mistakes, a drop here, a drop there, I feel like Jacksonville could have won. We're talking about them differently. The spread is perhaps different. And I still don't understand how Indianapolis is being counted on after tying one of the least talented football teams in the NFL, who is now a 10-point dog to a team that lost to the Seattle Seahawks. Think about that for a second. I've got the Jags +4. I understand they let me down last week, but that was sort of fluky. I got Jacksonville in this divisional game at home, where they're much better defensively, plus the 4 versus Indianapolis. I am taking my New England Patriots -2 over the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. I understand you don't usually want to back a guy that's saying, oh, take my team -2. Well, I actually think that this is a rare case where the New England Patriots are being underestimated right now, and they're actually being over-exaggerated for the flaws that they have. You know, a lot of people are talking about their offense just kind of sucking and being a disaster in week 1. First of all, they played a very good defense. Second of all, they played in their house of horrors, like I just suggested, in Miami. We all expected Miami to win that game. I picked Miami to win that game. It's no different. I picked them to win that game 4 months ago, right? But I also picked the Patriots to beat the Steelers 4 months ago, and I'm not changing my plan because of what I saw in week 1. And what I saw in week 1 was not exactly completely discouraging. New England had many opportunities to not only be in that game, but sway the momentum of it and stay in the game and make that a really down-to-the-wire football game. Offensively, they started hot. They went down to the red zone. Mac Jones throws an interception in the end zone, which gets tipped up in the air, kind of fluky. It actually should have been PI. You know, Xavier Howard was tugging Devontae Parker. If that play goes their way, you know, you never really know what happens from there on out. Obviously, they give up a strip sack for a touchdown. That's another huge play. A 4th down and 7 at the end of the half with limited time left for a touchdown. Big plays in this game that really swayed it and really created the Dolphins to become the winner of that game. I think their offense is better than people think. I think they ran the ball to some success last week versus Miami. I think they could replicate that versus Pittsburgh. Joe Mixon had success last week. Without TJ Watt, there's going to be holes on the edge to exploit from Stevenson and Damian Harris, which opens up Mac Jones. I think the Patriots will be smart enough to implement more play action, more motion. Coaching will definitely be under a microscope this week for Bill Belichick because everybody's being critical, backs against the wall for Bill Belichick and Matt Patricia, and I think they're going to make adjustments here. Kendrick Bourne's likely to see the field this week, which would be huge for the receiving game, but I thought Mac got the ball out quick, crisp last week, and I think that carries over this week versus a secondary that's much weaker, much more deficiencies in Pittsburgh than Miami. Both games were on the road, so I'm not too worried about the home field. In fact, Miami's a much greater home field at this point in the year. I just look at the better quarterback in this game, Mac Jones over Mitch Trubisky, an offense in Pittsburgh that's extremely limited, that really did nothing versus Cincinnati. They had one drive and that was it. Their offensive line stinks. New England's defensive line is very underrated. Dietrich Wise had a strip sack that didn't go their way. That was another fluky play. They had multiple dropped interceptions. It was just a fluky loss in a lot of ways for the Patriots. And Matthew Judon, Christian Barmore can really dictate the line of scrimmage on that side of the ball. I think they match up fine in the secondary. Trubisky can make his fair share of mistakes versus a Belichick defense. I think the Patriots are the better team. I think they've got the better quarterback. I think they have a coach that usually exploits this opposing coach's defense. And I like New England to win minus the 2 points. Carolina Panthers plus the 2/money line over the New York Giants. Don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of the Giants. I hope they win this game, to be honest with you, because I love Saquon. I love to see that story of his comeback and prove the haters wrong. And I think Daniel Jones has always been kind of unfairly criticized. But my heart and my brain are just on different tracks because I think the Carolina Panthers are a value this week. Coming into the season, I would have said that Carolina, and I did say, in fact, was kind of a dark horse sleeper wild card team potentially. And the Giants were still, making their way, rebuilding. Thought the Giants in week 1 got extremely lucky based on a few big plays. One big throw down the field is Sterling Shepard. One huge run by Saquon Barkley. Not a ton of defense played by the Giants last week in the passing game. I think Baker Mayfield can take advantage of that with the weapons that the Titans don't have. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, who can stretch the field. I think the Giants are weak at corner 2 and 3. Besides Adoree Jackson, you can exploit them. Don Martindale has had success versus Baker Mayfield, which is a tad concerning. But I saw Baker in the second half really kind of control the game, make much better reads. I thought the offense kind of figured themselves out. This is, again, a new offense with a new quarterback, Ben McAdoo, all that. They didn't give the ball to Christian McCaffrey enough. They didn't get the ball to DJ Moore enough. Expect that stuff to change looking at the tape. I think the Panthers had a chance to win that game last week. They got really some unfortunate referee calls. I feel like Baker is going to have a good game here against this secondary. I don't think the Giants can pressure the Panthers the way that the Browns did, because the Giants are strong in the interior, not the edge from a pass rush perspective, which is going to lead to blitzing from the Giants, which then also leads one-on-one matchups for Baker to exploit with his really fast and downfield targets like Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. One of them's going to have that matchup. McCaffrey out of the backfield, another possibility there. And then Carolina's defense, I feel good about them in the secondary. I think they're pretty strong. They did a really good job versus Cleveland's passing attack. I am a little concerned about them defending Saquon, but it's not enough for me to sway towards the Giants. I think the Giants, they don't know what they're doing in terms of what's Kadarius Toney doing. They can't even get their best receiver on the field. Their receivers don't scare anybody to me. I just think the Giants got a little bit fortunate last week. The Panthers got a little bit unlucky. And this is a better matchup for Carolina and a worse matchup potentially for the Giants. The Giants matched up better with the Titans because of how strong and how powerful they are as a football team, specifically defensively to stop Derrick Henry. This is the opposite. Carolina is much faster, much more finesse. So I think Carolina wins this game, and I think they're a value bet at +2. Those are my favorite spread picks for week 2. Let me know yours in the comment section below. It's Mitch. Thanks for watching. Gronk spike the like button. And don't forget to check out the over-unders video as well. as I went 3-1 last week. Let's roll into week 2 and let's have a good week. Peace.